Welcome to Podcaster Toten. This is a special Chaos edition of the podcast, and we have two very special guests. My name's Rad.
I'm Matt.
This is Tech.
Meh.
This is ProjectKMR.
All right, so today we're going to talk about mostly the Chaos story. Myself personally, I don't know much about it, so I'm mostly going to let our two guests kind of dictate the conversation. So what do you guys want to talk about in regards to Chaos?
The untapped potential of Chaos so far.
Mhm.
It's very, I don't even know how to describe it. It's sad seeing how uncared for Chaos has been compared to Ether. Even in the beginning days, it's been uncared for. Ether always had a little bit of a spark to it in the community, but Chaos, I think, has never been given a proper chance.
Probably won't, though. That's kind of the sad thing about that.
Yeah, I think it was just sort of an unfortunate timing, because even though they at
one
least
of those, oh, sorry.
no, it's fine. I was just saying it's just it was kind of unfortunate because it was like I think the way Treyarch set out the season pass really kind of shot themselves in the foot by saying, oh, the first year is just going to be Chaos only. And I think by then people were like, oh, now we're gonna have to wait another year for Ether. It didn't give it a chance, and
I think the worst part about it is the fact that Ether was coming to an end. Everyone knew that, and it's just a complete mess because everyone expected Ether to end. Then they introduced a brand new story,
yeah,
and
it's just unfortunate timing, and there wasn't enough to. They didn't balance it out, I think, properly, which is sort of unfortunate. But I guess at least Ancient Evil was received very well, right?
oh, very, very well,
Probably one of
and
the
deservingly
best.
so.
Yeah, so probably it's probably what's going to happen with Victus, where everyone was, I liked Victus, but I was always concerned about what happened to, Dempsey and Ultimus during Black Ops 2, so I never really got invested in Victus, and I can kind of see what happened, maybe the same thing happened here with the Chaos story, but probably in a few years they'll look back fondly.
Classified kind of solved the problem with Ultimus, too. So I'm not bothered by that personally.
No, yeah, I just meant, like, comparatively
Like
speaking.
at the time.
Yeah, it's like because
Right.
during Black Ops 2 days, that's what I meant. But I was fine with the whole year of Chaos, like because I actually really liked Classified. It felt like they went back and really kind of had the old, like it felt even though we had Chronicles, they didn't have that classic sort of zombies feel to it, or the classic Ultimus feel. But I'm just imagining.
Team at the time. That's the whole thing about that.
Well, I thought Craig Houston was still there though, right?
Right.
Craig
but
Houston
the
is
rest-
still there, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
It's still different. It's like they've aged way farther than they actually are. And it's pre-Moon, too. And Moon had probably some of my favorite quotes, too.
Oh,
Yeah.
dude, I could recast the entirety of Moon by memory if I wanted to.
I had a question about just even like the name of the story being
Yeah.
Chaos. Just like the fact that it got dubbed the Ether story, for example, is interesting. So like, what do you guys take away from it being called the Chaos story? Like, what does that say?
Well, from a mythological standpoint, Chaos is the embodiment of everything while also being nothing at the same time. So it's kind of like a origin point where the Ether is sort of an origin point for, well, the Ether story. Chaos is the centerpiece for the Chaos storyline.
Yeah, I think they did it too because one, they're playing up the mythology theme, and then two, to have like Chaos and Ether, and it kind of makes sense with at least in, I guess there's other mythologies that sort of have it where Chaos is the first thing that exists, but I think of like in Greek mythology, I think the Hesiod's like is it Theogony? I'm going to mispronounce it. Anyway, point is his origin story for Greek mythology, it has where Chaos is like the first entity, and then, comes Ether and all these other things, and Eros and blah, 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 blah. So like, it's kind of, I think they did like a clever tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, it's Chaos and Ether.
I definitely think that's what they were going for.
But yeah, and then I guess it also sort of has to do with the whole idea of Chaos is very much set on like alchemy, and
Mhm.
the whole idea of like like the first material, like prima materia, which is basically their 115, and this like formless shapeless matter then giving it form. So I guess that's kind of like the idea that everything's rooted in chaos, and the building blocks of the universe
Right.
is this sort of chaotic energy. So
It's
that's
all very Lovecraftian in nature because it's basically something that you can't comprehend. Like it's unfathomable for humans. Yet somehow humans got their hands on it, and that's why. I mean, chaos could not only be because of mythological chaos, but because wherever prima materia is, chaos is sure to come.
yeah. They're
So this
clever
is
like that.
I want to. So yeah, Matt, I want to ask you. I mean, everyone, but I know Matt and I have talked about this before. Just the idea that
I feel like I know where we're going.
yeah, just that that these stories may end up being merged at some point.
Ooh, man,
What
I
do you
hope
all
not.
think about that?
that's not.
I think it's a possibility because multiverse exists,
Yeah.
but at the same time, God, I really hope that doesn't happen because chaos is so unique so far.
Yeah,
I feel like calling it multiverse on that is giving Ether a lot, and I mean a lot of credit for that.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
sounding like Rickwick, so be honest.
I
That's not an insult.
I think I'm a little bit more hopeful, just because I feel like chaos sort of became the dumping ground for sort of story elements and plots that weren't or were going to be a part of Ether that they just never got to. So for me, it's like I'd always sort of like a reunion, and I think the way to do it without making it a mess is to sort of expand the universe more rather than
Mhm.
trying to like do like a one-to-one like all the deities in chaos or apothecons or keeper like I think if you turn it into that, then it becomes a mess. But to maybe say that there's a, and I hate the word, I know we just talked about multiverse, but like if there's a multiverse and then maybe there's other beings and planes out there that the only connection that might be easiest is maybe to have some connection to like element 115 and prima materia. But other than that, like you can still have it that maybe gods exist, or maybe it's I always viewed it as it's sort of maybe a pocket or a universe where it's pretty much untapped by the whole apothecon keeper war, and that's why this stuff allowed to fester or something like that. I just
Yeah.
think the way that maybe moving forward it might be able to be brought back in is because I don't think people are going to be receiving the idea of if we're doing a third reboot. I don't know if that's going to fly.
Right.
So I'm imagining
Ooh.
that if everything just kind of, if they blur it, it's like, well, technically it's all a part of the same universe, and so I think it can be done. You just can't step on what
Right.
makes each universe unique.
Well,
And
I
I think
think
that
there was one theory
Yeah.
I heard whenever Ether ended that kind of like it kind of made sense. Like if they wanted to go this route, and it's like after Ether ends, the Ether, basically the entire universe ends and it resets.
yeah.
And the idea that
Oh, and
like
it becomes chaos.
Chaos.
right,
yeah.
because I mean it's like how it's like in Greek mythology, it's like in the
Yeah.
beginning there's just chaos, literally just
Mhm.
chaos. So I mean that seemed interesting to me. And it wouldn't really step on any of the unique things about chaos. They
I
wouldn't
can
even
see
need to
them
be called
doing
chaos.
that.
Yeah. I think, and it's kind of like what I was saying, like you could either sort of have it as a reboot or like a side universe, and it's just all you have to say is just the Keeper Apothecon conflict that is very central to zombies was just in our Ether story, and this is a place where it's almost, it can be seen as like what happens if the Keepers and the Apothecons weren't involved in history or whatever, and like these other figures kind of came in, and I don't know, it'd just be neat to explore, because like there's always the idea of especially when you're talking about like the demonic announcer and stuff like that, like ranging from, is it the devil, is it an Aztec deity, like just I'm just saying like the wide, what were you about to say?
The chaos announcer is the
priest,
high priest
right?
of chaos.
Yeah. Oh, what I'm just saying was it's sorry, I'm talking about the Ether story, but I meant like
Oh,
how there's
oh.
always been those like who's the demonic announcer, and there's always been theories that it's this mythology or it's this sort of
Mhm.
it's the like you can, those elements that were always sort of a part of Ether, like you can just throw that with the chaos story, and it's kind of nice to just expand the universe that there's more deities
Sure.
and things out there. But yeah, that's right, because there's the demonic announcer. Is he the announcer in every single map?
He is the announcer in every single chaos map, but here's my theory. I personally don't believe that there is a demonic announcer to the point where there's a controller of the zombies. I think prima materia is just its own thing, where it creates them, and it's kind of like a hive mind.
Yeah. So I guess then this is the other question, because I know Shaw, I think, says it on Voyage of Despair, that is there a real supernatural element to because even though you have the statues to Danu, Ra, Odin, and Zeus, you don't really, and yes, there's Medusa and Perseus and Pegasus, but like, do you get a sense that are they real, or is this all from Prima Materia? Like,
Um,
because
it's hard to say. It's very hard to say because Shaw is, well, Shaw's frankly a madman on drugs, quite literally.
yeah,
So anything that Shaw spambles like can be misinterpreted to be anything. What he says isn't the say all until we get
no,
a
yeah,
confirmation. But
yeah. I was just sort of wondering what you were going with, because it's like I like the idea that there's still sort of like, and it's not a hard science by any means, but there's still like more of a concrete explanation for how the zombies work. But I still like the idea that maybe there are deities or something out there, and I think it would be neat to sort of have the two. But it does seem that, like the example with the werewolf, when you kill the werewolf in what's to say, Blood of the Night, Dead of the Night, you get
doesn't
prime
yeah.
materia. So it's like, oh, is the
Oh, better
werewolf? Is
than
it
you.
not a curse? Is it like a transmutation from like prima materia? Like it's just sort of trying to figure out
The
what.
there actually is an explanation for that. It was a druid curse that was placed on certain people, and they became werewolves through prima materia.
It's the so is the curse itself? Is it manipulating prima materia? So first of all, where is this from? Because as much as I played the maps, I think the one thing that is sort of the cardinal sin is I really haven't listened to much of the radios. I know there's the
That's
one.
why. That's
Yeah,
why, man.
there's the one in
I don't even know
IX
how
I know
you
that talks about.
activate those.
Yeah, they're like the gramophones, right? That you just find
Mm-hmm.
somewhere.
The gramophones, yeah.
Yeah, I found I know there's the one where it's all, and it's also when I was in IX, it was so hard to hear when I was playing 9. But I know there's the one about the Holy Grail. But so then, what's the background on the werewolves? Because it's a druid curse.
It's
Um,
basically all that we have to it is druid curse. Danu is involved somehow, and I don't even know how to explain it. It's
that's
just a
interesting.
bunch of druids coming together and they do some magic stuff and yeah.
That's interesting. Is there sort of like an equivalent to that in Celtic mythology? Because like when I always think of like werewolves, it's either like Nordic, Slavic, or I think there's even sort of the I think it's also the word comes from the Greek myth. Like, is there anything that's because I'm least familiar with Celtic mythology that you know of?
Uh, Celtic mythology is a tough one because not much is actually known about
Yeah, that's
Celtic
what it seems to
mythologies.
be.
So I think that because Danu herself is barely, and I mean barely, a real thing in human text. Like there is next to nothing that exists over Danu. So
Yeah,
I
isn't
think
it?
it's really just some creative liberties.
Yeah, because isn't it like the only existence of Danu is that there's a people who like there's a mythical group people who have taken her name, so then you presuppose that there was someone before that they like that they
Yeah,
named themselves. Yeah,
something along those lines.
because I do sort of like the idea that each one sort of represents an element. Like Danu is like I guess Mother Earth, Zeus is sort of the sky, Ra is fire, and I guess Odin is water, which I thought that was cool. But yeah, I mean, I guess the werewolves and vampires is probably more just like a throwback to like Dracula and stuff like that. I'm guessing, rather than maybe it's not. There's anything too rooted in Celtic mythology. Although I think what's the medium does say that she mentioned something about a blood sucking dwarf, right? But I think that's more Nordic.
I think that's just a reference to the
I
actually
remember
you might
that
be
quote.
right.
Because
Yeah.
it's no, and then you know what I think it's also Native
It's
American
similar to
too.
the vampires.
Yeah, it
So
is Native
Yeah,
American. It has
comparison.
Native American origin.
yeah, I think it's that's right because I think because it's both. Yeah, because I think I forget the cow Gideon. Gideon mentions it, and then she met. So I guess there's like, so it's kind of nice that like, there's also that's the other thing that I think was really fun about the potential of chaos was that they tap into other mythologies that aren't even represented by those four. Like you sort of had
Hmm.
Gideon referencing like skinwalkers and Wendigo. Does he mention Wendigos? Maybe I don't know, but
No,
it's
he
kind of
does
nice.
say
Wendigos.
Wendigos.
Okay, he does. Or maybe
I
he
didn't
doesn't say
hear that quote.
skinwalker. What'd you say?
I didn't hear that quote. I was just saying that.
Okay.
Not trying to say.
No. I was
Probably.
trying to remember. maybe during the boss fight. Again, I haven't done boss fights. Maybe that's when he says Skinwalker. But it was cool that like
Yes, he does mention Skinwalker as someone who's done the Chaos quests a little too many times in one life.
Yeah.
I
You know
don't
what's
hear it.
I have a question, because
Yeah.
I've done Voyage of Despair and 9. I think the most that and Dead of Night. But when you're doing the Kraken, to get the
Yeah.
Kraken, and you go to the sort of where there's like the meat locker, you if you
Mhm.
keep running through it, you hear like sort of some type of like wailing. Is that just the Kraken? Because I've always wondered about that. There's like a monstrous like wail that you hear, like something's like moaning. Roaring. Like, is there
It
anything?
very well could be. I don't think I've ever noticed this on my own gameplays,
Mhm.
but I do think that it's just the Kraken being the Kraken.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
No, it makes sense. I was like, ooh, that's kind of cool, because it happens if you can get it where you're away from zombies, because they're always screaming in your ear. If you go to the meat locker, and you run through it, then you'll hear like a monstrous like roar, and I just was like, is this? I always think, is this an Easter egg step? Is this something else? But I don't know. And then my other question: is there an explanation for like what exactly are the Blight Fathers?
Oh man, that's a really good one. I've tried to dig into the Blight Fathers a lot, and to my knowledge, there's nothing. They just kind of
Yeah.
exist.
Here's a crackpot idea. So, let's just assume it's like a sick human guy and they get infected with the prima materia, and then that's what kind of creates it. Like, he's got some very bad sickness from back in the day, and you guys know how that is. Like,
Yeah.
it was survival of the fittest back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's
Disease rooted out, like, weak people.
just had some big
I really
tumors.
don't know. I think the Blight Fathers are nothing more than just what would you call them? Like a mutation. I don't know.
Yeah, like
this elemental
That's
ones.
actually probably part of it too. That's probably what would explain what are they called, catalysts?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
catalysts.
Guys.
because the thing about the catalyst, I guess there maybe is some type of like plague element, but all the other catalysts are based on the elements, so it makes sense given the alchemical theme. And then they kind of
And the gods. And all that.
yeah, and the gods, and
I mean, you could argue that perhaps
It
the
does
Blight
have
Father
something to
has
do
something to
with
do with
materia,
Egyptians.
because
Yeah.
you can get the matching like elements that you have to do that challenge with. So it might have something to do with the function of prima materia in its core.
I
To
also
what
thought
end,
that
I could not tell you.
yeah, like based on the Nine's introduction and the way the Blight Fathers come out, while the other catalyst transformations just look like the zombie is sort of shedding like its skin, and then it's like the
Mhm.
elements infused to like the what's left, the muscles and bones. The Blight Father looks like it's almost being summoned because it comes out of the chest. So like I
Yeah,
always thought they were like
that's
summoning it
Yeah,
rather than like they're becoming it.
That's a good point, actually.
I like that.
Yeah, because like I think in the introduction too, it's not a zombie that transforms, right? It's just like a
It's a
random
guy.
Yeah,
guy.
it's a random
And part
dude
of
that
it
just
is too, they're made up of like the innards and all that too. You can kind of see some of those details on
Yeah.
Blight Fathers and on anything really. And yeah,
So like
that's
it's
just
just
kind of what I remember.
yeah. So it's just sort of strange. So then we
I-
know the. Oh, so about to say something?
Sorry, I was just gonna. Well, I mean, you can continue the thought. I was just having a different, separate question.
yeah. What is
I
it?
do like the boss design of Chaos, and I wish they would do that more.
Mm.
It kind of goes into what we were talking about before about how boss design could be better in Ether.
Mhm.
But that's just me going off on boss
But yeah,
fights
no,
all
I
the
think
time.
the chaos maps have really good design. Like,
I
Revelations
like the
Shadow
elephant
Man
Got a lot
makes
of
me
love.
want to
Whatever they're called.
burst a blood
Yeah.
vessel.
Nine
Yeah.
is a fantastic map for spectacle alone. And I love
Dude,
that.
it's so unique. I love it.
I've
To
played
this
it.
day, I don't think I've played a map more on launch than 9.
Yes. I think I've done that where I haven't played it probably in a year, and I think I could go back and still remember the steps to like the shield, the this, the that. It's just I don't know. I've done that so much; it's just ingrained.
It's
In
Nine
my
is like
memory,
the Kino of Chaos, like how Horizon was the Kino of Black Ops 3 in the sense. Except Kino, because Kino was Kino in that game too.
So I started introducing, this is off topic, but I figured I have to say this. I've been introducing my girlfriend to Ether, like subliminally, like low key for the past few months.
Some like MK Ultra shit.
Pretty much. Like that's the route I have to go to.
Okay.
And she has really taken a liking to Blood of the Dead, which has made me question my relationship. But
I will question it too, don't worry.
She actually told me that you cannot hate on Blood of the Dead so much if you don't do the Easter egg on Solo. And I did it in Solo just so I could tell her, you know what, I have every reason to hate this map.
Well, I feel like Blood of the Dead is a good sign though, because I think I had this conversation with Hunter where it felt like the direction and elements that were in Mob of the Dead kind of laid the foundations for Chaos. So I think you can kind of work your way back. It's like, oh, if you like Blood of the Dead, you might like this, and then you might like Chaos. So
yeah, I guess so, but that's not. I don't know. It's so weird.
It's
like
more
the mindset.
Status
The
quo.
mindset they had for remaking one of, if not the best zombies map of all time. How could they have failed that? They had premise, for God's sake.
Keep in mind, they kind of didn't when it comes to atmosphere. I think they did that perfect.
Oh no, they nailed the atmosphere.
It's a step down from
I love
Mob.
the story.
That's about the bulk of it.
the only thing that I was sort of was like, I like that. I still to this day am not sure if Mob of the Dead was supposed to be a standalone or was supposed to be a part, because it seems like there was evidence on both sides. And the only thing that I was sort of a little upset by is that even though Blood of the Dead still keeps the heavily satanic theme, it's more of in the vein of merging it with Apothicon stuff. So it's like, it feels like it kind of lost some of its identity there. But, it's neither here nor there, nor about Chaos.
Yeah, it's okay. To look back to Chaos, I do have a question. So, I mean, as someone that only really watched the cutscenes and did the Easter eggs, I didn't listen to any extra content. I was never really clear. Is 9 supposed to be like a different plane of existence, or is it like a different time?
It's a different time.
The characters say that, and I don't think it's. They go to the Oracle of Delphi, and then they inhale the vapors, and they're transported back in time. But what that means, even the characters don't entirely understand. Like whether or not they're reliving the memories of like gladiators, and they just look like themselves, or were they actually sent back in time? Or I think it's like it's just a trip. That's essentially what it boils down to.
I'm about 95% sure. This might go into headcanon territory, but I definitely think that they are just reliving the memories of other people. But I think that because you've got one of the scroll messages, one of the scroll radios, or whatever you want to call it, saying something about these two explorers that go into the same thing, and they end up dying. But
okay, so it's kind of like Assassin's Creed in a way.
Yeah, something like that.
Animus.
Is that the one that's like Assassin's Creed is kind of a good example. But I'm assuming the reason why they still look like Shaw's, Bruno.
It's just not to make things more confusing.
Yeah, that's what I was okay. And then the two people you were talking about, that's the one who's trying to find like the Holy Grail, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Because I did hear that radio. Now the two questions that I have, I don't know. I'll go with the bigger one first. The ending of Ancient Evil with the revelation of Medusa and all that stuff. Is Alistair working with the cult, against the cult? Like, what is your sort of takeaway from that? Like, are the cult really the good guys, the bad guys, or is it more of like a third party thing where you have Medusa, you have the cult, and then maybe you have Alistair and co?
I think the cult thought they were doing something right, but right when they discovered that they weren't doing something right, it was too late for them, and Alistair tries to help them out after that, but then they get turned to stone. So it's kind of like I feel like they were screwed.
Gotcha.
I
And
would like to remind you guys that they kidnapped him.
Yeah.
yeah, so I know there was a variety of theories about like whether the kidnapping was like some type of, what was that state? Like, yeah, because it does seem to be he's kidnapped in the dead of the night. But I was just sort of wondering what exactly is everyone's, because do you believe that uh the cult, and I think we've mentioned this maybe in the Discord, are they sort of adherents of like Apophis, or what is your take on that? Because
That's a deep one.
Yeah, that is. I
That
think the
depends on
cult
how.
is.
I'll
I
let
think
you
the
go.
cult is just a strange following. I think they're just followers of a belief that they believe in, like manic followers, and that's about it. I don't think there's anything deeper about
Okay.
them. I
Gotcha.
just think that they're
'Cause
manic.
it just seemed interesting that, like, I mean, unless maybe Medusa's trying to take over the cult, it seems like she would be more in line with the cult, because if they're about, Apophis, and he's gonna come and swallow up the sun and then be chased by Ra, blah blah. Like, it seems like Medusa, and maybe in her connection, if you take the variant of the myth, that she's sort of like a, not a primordial, but like an ancient monster. Like, it would, like sort of titans and monsters versus gods. Like, it would seem that she would be more in line with the sort of Apophis versus Ra, and you have like the Python versus Apollo. Like, so I'm not sure like why would she go after the cult, but I guess maybe we'll maybe we'll find out.
I think everyone just has hidden agendas. I don't
Yes.
think she. I don't
There's
think she
no-
necessarily aligns with the cult. I think the only reason she put that mask on at the end was because it blocks prima materia.
Mm,
Because if we remember at the end of the 9 cutscene, when the priest gets injected, so to
Mhm.
speak, with prima materia, he has his mask off. I think the
Mhm.
mask just protects you from prima materia.
okay. And this gets to the other, I guess,
Um,
theory is and maybe this is sort of where I thought it had some connection to Pygmal, like the or the altering of the Pygmalion myth. But what is your take on Scarlet? Like, what's special? Is there anything special about her? Is that a red herring? Like,
She's
because
just
you don't
got
really
Lara
get
Croft,
much.
so no.
I think it's a split potential. I think that there's a chance of it being a red herring, but I also think there's a chance of it being she's like a demigod or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Because I think there was the theory that maybe she was made of prima materia, or like she is prima materia or something like that.
Ooh.
Because
Well, that
like
would be playing into the whole you're making this character special to be special and all that nonsense, Like,
well,
they were special from the get-go. That's a Mary Sue kind of thing, and I'm not trying to be, like,
no,
judgmental on that, but,
I'm not,
you
like,
know.
I was fine with her just being the daughter. Like, I feel like that's reason enough.
Yeah.
But it seemed like the whole thing with Medusa trying to peer into her mind and then get, I guess, knowledge of, and maybe it's just, oh, she just wants to know what happened in the last, like, 2,000
Yeah.
years. But at the same time, the only reason why I think it was sort of strange is that there's the whole, when you go around in Ancient Evil and they have all the different myths, and then they have the Pygmalion myth, and the ending of that, Pygmalion, he wanted a wife, he creates a perfect wife sculpture, and he prays to like Aphrodite, and Aphrodite then like blesses the sculpture and it comes to life, and she becomes his wife, and they live happily ever after in the myth. But in the Chaos story, she leaves him, which it just seems like such a random freaking myth to change, like that has really no bearing. And the only connection that I could make is that if there's some weird connection to like Alistair and maybe his wife or something like that, like, or like there's some type of like not gonna say golem, but kind of like some, I don't know. It was just such a bizarre thing that's the only thing I could think. Like, why would you change that one myth that really has no bearing on the story? Unless it has something to do with maybe if Scarlet is like some type of demigod or some type of like embodiment of prima materia. Again, not that I want that, but it's just.
There's always something that has really kind of rustled my jimmies about Scarlet, is that she has such a hatred for her dad. And I read all the comics,
Yeah.
and there is no reason that she should be hating on him so much.
Yeah, the one thing about Scarlet is like I feel like even Bruno, who's sort of like uh brooding and like, oh, I was a mercenary and all that, like he can still he's still sort of self-aware and can make jokes. Like it just feels like they just always write Scarlet as she's pissed off. That's just like the consistency for her character.
Yeah,
like, every
that's
I was
character.
gonna say she was kind of in like one of those tough love situations, because like she's genuinely sad when like the Dead of the Night cutscene goes,
Mhm.
and like he
Oh, yeah.
officially is kidnapped. He's just like, oh, Dad, or something like that, you know?
Yeah, it's just weird that all the other characters get to take a break. You know what I mean? Like Bruno can shoot the shit or make a joke, and Diego's kind of, he's the even then he still has some like funny lines, and then Shaw, he goes from deciphering what's going on to then making a joke about like being homeless or something like that.
That's
And
they
then, but
backed
it's
off
like
a little bit by the time of Ancient Evil. Like I think she
She's
was a
the
little bit more
nihilist of the
likable,
group.
yeah,
and
Yeah,
she did genuinely ask
something.
questions about her dad. Like she cared,
Mhm.
which I found interesting.
Yeah, like here's another thing. Someone mentioned Diego with his funny quotes. Hot take of the day for you guys. I think Diego is the next Nikolai, like Ultimus Nikolai. He's so damn funny to me.
Oh yeah, I love Diego.
I mean, to me, Ultimus still is the funniest. I think between all three of them, I enjoyed it. Shaw's, I felt, got a little repetitive with like doing drugs and stuff. I think the funniest quote that I've enjoyed from Shaw was where he says, "If you asked me 10 years ago or if you told me 10 years ago that today I would be fighting like monsters in like a plane of my own imagination, I'd say, yeah, probably." I think that was the funniest quote. So, but yeah, I it's interesting because I think when Treyarch started to do the one-off crews, they became, maybe it's, I don't know if it was because people knew they were one-off crews, but they seem to be more interesting and likable. Like I like Victus, but I feel like when Victus came out, it was so hard adjustment, and like kind of comparing Victus to Chaos, like there's more things I think that are sort of likable about at least some of the way the characters act in Chaos. And I just think it's kind of interesting that it seems like they've gotten better with that
Like
over time.
like the way that I've been looking at Chaos is I've been drawing a lot of parallels between Chaos and the World War II zombies thing. I've really drawn a lot of parallels from that because it's a lot of it basically is using real life stuff to your advantage and twisting it in your own little fashion. Like
Yeah.
World War II had the whole Fourth Reich thing with the Nazi zombies and everything, and all that type of stuff. And I can definitely see Treyarch even looking at Sledgehammer's take and taking a couple of things away from it.
Well, that's sort of what I hope, because I liked, because even, I mean, I thought I didn't really play Infinite Warfare or World War II, but the things I liked about World War II was they kind of went back to the roots and went into like the history and conspiracy, and Infinite Warfare also had elements of that with like, had like Mephistopheles and things. So like I appreciate those things, and it was nice to see that return in Chaos. I mean,
Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Like I had far more fun playing Infinite Warfare and World War II Zombies than I did with Black Ops 4.
Okay.
Like Black Ops 4, I had to drop it for a long time.
Yeah, see, like I never played the other ones. I just, it was so hard. Like I really appreciated what they did. It's just, I guess I'm guilty of it too. It's not the Treyarch story, so it wasn't. And then it was also another $60 investment plus DLC, so it's just kind of like I'll skip out on it. But
Understandable.
yeah, I really liked it, and I can appreciate that, like especially with like the whole like Monuments Men, like that was sort of the angle that they took, that they're going in to get these artifacts, and then it turns into some weird Nazi stuff, and to kind of go back to the question of if the two stories can be merged, it is funny that like Ether and Chaos are kind of two sides to the same coin, in the sense that when you think of like the Nazi like occult roots, I mean you sort of have the pseudoscience with like this weird mystical electrical energy, and then there's also the weird occult like paganistic sort of beliefs that was also associated with that, and it's kind of like you see it both. Either they're almost like complementary, like the ether, or sorry, chaos is more of the occult side, and then ether is more of like the border
The
science
scientific side, yeah.
Yeah, and they both are like two components to that weird like Nazi pseudoscience. So it's nice that like I feel like you can still kind of make them work. It's just, yeah. Oh, side note, do you think that there's Is Pitfall in the Chaos universe? What's your take on that?
Oh, dude, I'm a retro collector. Like I've got Pitfall. I'm staring at Pitfall as we speak, and I 100% think that Pitfall is in. Activision will do anything to reference their glory days.
So, do you think is there a Pitfall Harry in the Chaos universe, or is it just Diego? Because I would like to think that there also is a Pitfall Harry.
I think it's just a Diego.
Okay.
Although Pitfall Harry and Chaos, that'd be hilarious.
Like it could just be a one-off map, a Pitfall Harry Chaos map, maybe like in South America.
I'd buy it. I'd buy it.
Okay. So why don't we transition to like the last question of the night?
Yeah.
So
Right.
where do you think Chaos would have gone had it continued? Because I think the cliffhanger for Chaos was such. It was like a really strong one compared to what Ether cliffhangers usually are. And like
I'd have to agree with that.
It's like you really don't know where they're gonna go. Like two of the characters are switched, switched roles.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
I recall hearing that the map that they were going to make was something along the lines of Paris as the next map.
Oh, boy.
I don't know if that's true, but it would have been the next thing, I imagine.
Do you think it would have gone with the theme though of each map supposedly represented one of the 4 deities, but I guess the one question is, do you think IX or 9 was a composite, or was 9 Ra's trial?
9 was
Very
strictly raw. It was
Okay.
strictly raw.
So then we had we had then Danu. So we had everyone then by that time. So I guess they could have gone
Yeah.
anywhere. Yeah, I was wondering if they were going to do more mythological maps. Like it seemed like the Library of Alexandria. I was guessing they would go. I'm assuming Atlantis, because I just feel like Chaos was going to go the route of where all the maps that couldn't be worked into the Ether story were going to be thrown into Chaos. So I was expecting like Atlantis and stuff like that.
Right.
But
I'm not in the void, Rad.
My inner Rad Austin 27 is just going insane over Atlantis. Like I have always wanted to see Atlantis happen.
Yes. Please.
Like
I mean,
or better yet, instead of
I tried
Atlantis,
to think of how it would work best, and part of me thinks, everybody expects Atlantis, but you need to find a way to make it so it's not exactly what everybody thinks it's going to be.
Oh.
I would have
Yeah,
accepted like Minoan Crete, where it would be like the labyrinth and maybe with the Minotaur. Like that would I thought would have been a really cool map, but maybe I don't know, maybe too similar to Ancient Evil or something. But that's would have been I would have liked.
nah.
All right.
Well, what about
I did Atlantis, by the way. It's probably a random thing.
I've got a question, and then we can start the wrap up. What do you both think about the Chaos Crew and Blightfather showing up in Blackout? How do you
Oh God,
They're fine in
that's a
Blackout.
whole other can of worms, my friend.
I still need Shaw, dude.
Can I add to that? What do you think about the multiplayer map, the Museum of Unnatural History, and I think it's Excavation, which featured
Oh my
Chaos stuff?
God,
It's a good map.
That-
But it's better.
that's something to really wrap your head around. At this point, you can't tell what the hell Treyarch is trying to do.
Yeah,
It's
and
a
'cause
simulation.
the map
It's all in your
features
head.
both,
You're in
they
the
feature
box.
both Chaos and Ether.
You're in the box. There's not a glitch in the Matrix.
You're in the box.
No, exactly, Matt.
You
It's
in the box, Mason.
putting everything between Ether and Chaos in the same location for a map. You're like, hold on.
Like
Yo,
if
Specialist HQ
if Treyarch is
zombies?
trying to tell us that everything is canonical with one another, that just opens up so many plot holes that are just
Hey.
impossible to understand.
Multiverse. Enough said.
No, like even in the context of it's multiverse, there's so many things you would have to explain with that you just wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah, and I think part of that is, ironically, you would think it would have nothing to do with the story, but because they canonized gameplay, I think that's the biggest crux in this, or I guess your theme, your Achilles heel, is that now it's like you could probably make it work, but yeah, now
Wonder how
that
they
like
would
is
do Achilles heel. in Chaos. River
Guys,
Styx,
Blackout
that's how it's
Blackout is nothing more. Blackout is nothing more than just a. It's the end of Ether. They're in the dark ether. Blackout is the dark ether.
I think it's
Probably
the
why I
Monty's
hate
dumping
it.
ground or some place. Yeah, it's somewhere.
Well, this is
Well,
the-
here's the question though: where would Monty be in this equation? Because
Well-
Shadow Man is there, but Monty isn't.
I still don't know why Shadow Man is
That's
like.
why he's not there.
It's
It's
just
his
vibing.
dumping
It's in
ground.
the summoning key. They're all in the summoning key. That's why.
I think
I'll
he's
tell
just
you why
vibing.
Shadow Man's there, because they had enough money to get Robert Picardo, and they didn't have enough money to get Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah.
One or the other.
Brad, take us home.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, we spiraled out of control. We gotta rein it back in.
a little chaotic.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what can I
ooh.
say? Chaos.
It is the Chaos Cast.
Okay, Dad.
Okay, guys. So that wraps up this podcast, our special Chaos Cast. So, any final parting words?
Hopefully,
Uh,
there's more.
Y'all remember
Musings.
Chaotix on TV?
Here, guys, just a word of advice. Because you're watching this, you are a zombies enthusiast. Stop introducing people to this storyline. It will cause them great deals of harm.
That's true.
You should have been here before it got complicated.
It's ours.
Kidding.
I mean, yeah.
Still complicated though.
I'm gonna die with this.
Yep.
Doesn't mean you have to.
I'm gonna be on my deathbed wondering about some Call of Duty Zombies thing.
I've already said I'm gonna have the Frozen Forest speech at my funeral. Someone's doing it.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yep.
All right. Well, that wraps it up. So, see you guys next time.
Bye bye.
Yeah.